And the winner for the 2026 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction is Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. Today, we're going to take a deeper look into a spoiler free synopsis and the book's themes. We'll examine what the committee may have seen in it and whether or not it deserved to win the 2026 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. This decision will surely ignite some controversy, so stick with me until and when I reveal my final judgment. I read the book way back in December, and I have some thoughts. Angel Down was first published in July of 2025. I vaguely remember it receiving some fanfare in the speculative fiction and horror communities when it was first released. But it was treated similarly to other anticipated novels around the time. In December of the same year, it appeared on the New York Times top 10 books of the year. And going by the article's comment section at the time, the conversation focused on other novels, primarily like The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kieran Desai, The Director by Daniel Keelman, and Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. Some commenters expressed curiosity and surprise that Angel Down was even on the list. And I don't mean this in a negative way. But aside from the early adopters, it didn't seem to make very big waves. This is why the Pulitzer Committee's decision has met with some confusion. For many literary fiction devotees and Pulitzer Prize followers, this book was nowhere on the radar, and it's surely to go down as one of the biggest surprises in all of the prize's history. In the years to come, will it actually be accepted as a brave selection or reviled as a pandering overreach? I watched some of the live video reactions on YouTube to the prize, and most reactions were fairly similar. First, there's confusion. Second, a hint of disappointment. And third, acceptance and curiosity. The medium to short 285-page book is called by some a speculative fiction novel, but I think more accurately, it best fits the horror genre, although I do think genres are marketing speak. The book's innovation and claim to fame is that it's written as a single sentence for the entire novel. To clue readers into this novelty, the first line begins with the word and, which indicates both that the story has already started and that this story is in mid sentence. We call this in medias res. It's a form of it, which in literary device meaning means simply it starts in the middle of the action. And there are lots of books and stories that do that. The single sentence affects a breathlessness and also an urgency that fuels the story's anxiety and claustrophobia. That word breathlessness comes across frequently in the reviews. I'll note also that the one sentence method cheats, and it's not a true one sentence novel. Cross punctuates many lines with comma splices rather than ending them with periods. And he uses other devices like parenthetical asides and also what's called predication, which is extending the predicate in the sentence beyond its logical scope. So, the one sentence method is an effect rather than a true single sentence. But he is in good literary company with other authors who have worked traditional grammar to produce and manipulate tone. One of the most famous ones is William Faulkner in Absalom, Absalom. He had an 8-page long sentence that he affected with kind of drunkenness, and some of the same techniques. The rest of Angel Down occurs during World War I in the midst of an Allied offensive on the Western Front. The narrator is American Private Cyril Bagger, who is an unsavory character, but also not above redemption. He's a draft dodger. He's a con man. And he self admittedly avoids the trenches and artillery bombardment by staying on burial duty on the back lines. But he does have a sort of moral code despite his obvious war fatigue, so he's not completely unlikable. It's safe to say that he's probably not, though, soon for promotion or commendation. Soon after the book's introduction, Bagger begins to hear an incessant screech coming from No Man's Land. No Man's Land is the place or area between the lines or between the trenches where the soldiers must cross to advance on the other enemy's trenches. It's often filled with pits, mortar shells, dead and dying bodies, rats. It's not a pleasant place. In fact, it's a desolate and destroyed, hellish pit where no soldier wants to remain. But the screech is so loud and unnerving that Bagger and his compatriots are ordered to investigate. With a small group of equally or probably actually even more unsavory characters, Bagger sets out into No Man's Land to, he thinks, perform a mercy killing of a dying soldier. When they finally arrive at the screech's source, they discover a luminescent creature who they conclude is, of course, an angel. The angel has a mysterious influence on the men. It reveals itself to them as a figure of ambition and desire, which confronts the soldiers with a choice. They can accomplish their mission or use the angel to achieve their own personal glory, greed, or other fulfillments. The story progresses through a journey back to military command, who they think will use the angel to end the war, but sometimes human motivations are not quite so clear. Without spoiling too much, ultimately, this is an anti-war novel that reveals how the sacrifices of warfare are fed back through the war machine to fuel future conflicts. Bagger and crew are left with the decision of whether or not to play their role in that problem or take another path. Other significant themes are related to this main thesis. The novel uses the mechanism of temptation to seduce characters into action. They are, through their own visions, asked whether or not to settle for reward or eventually humanity. However, this temptation is not just a matter of desire. Depending on the character's motivations, their visions, even for salvation, can be corrupted. So their temptation is not just about reward. They slide into delusion. This perspective makes some characters' enthusiasms a bit more complex. The book's sheer and unrelenting violence does what a lot of other war stories do. Their protagonist's survival becomes, in these stories, a matter of endurance and transformation. And through this transformation, the main character learns moral lessons about self, society, and humanity, or so it goes in the traditional war story. Think, for example, the movies Platoon or Apocalypse Now, wherein soldiers are subject to barrage after barrage of killing and violence. But in the end, they come out changed and sometimes broken people. Angel Down conveys a similar idea, but the moral and metaphysical implications of the angel heighten the book's conceits beyond even those movies. Now, how do I actually feel about this book? Would I recommend it, and is it Pulitzer Prize worthy? As I said, I read this book about 5 months ago. It was offered as a part of a buy two, get one free situation, as funny as that may sound. And I don't have strong memories of reading the novel. That's not necessarily a strike against it, but it may be a comment on its lasting impact, which I think is going to be key to how I see it as a Pulitzer Prize book. I read the book in 2 sittings. It was exciting. I had one shorter session in the very beginning, then a much longer one in the later part of the novel. I just mowed through it, and the one sentence idea contributes to that. I'd classify it as a page turner, and the novel's one sentence novelty again definitely contributes to the excitement. However, we have seen this writing style before in other novels and even kind of some movies as well. In fact, the 2019 film, which was called 1917, simulated a single unbroken shot, and that was also a World War I story. The aesthetic in Angel Down feels eerily similar to that movie. Kraus, in fact, has a long association with Hollywood. So crossover influencers are not beyond the realm of possibility. Check, for example, the author's connection with Josh Brolin and Ron Howard, and there begins to develop a picture. The violence in the book is a bit over the top at times, and it feels like it plays to shock and spectacle, which I think unfortunately cheapens the book's impact rather than develops its critique. The book is partly about endurance through violence and war, so it's not unusual or even unexpected to be immersed and doused in this intensity. But even to accomplish this goal, a couple of scenes seem unnecessarily graphic and maybe even a panders to some horror audiences. I don't think that's a negative. That's what you do in writing. You appeal to your audience. But I will say a number of other war stories have communicated a similar transformative nature of war with less hyperbole. A few of the novel's other ideas feel familiar as well. The classic novel Slaughterhouse-Five uses explicit references to angelic and Christian symbology to call out some of the hypocrisies of war, which Angel Down does as well. Time travel is also a feature in Slaughterhouse-Five, which Angel Down's visions seem to reference. The book's supposed innovative concepts, they have lots of antecedents. So it doesn't really break any new ground. It's very entertaining and actually well done. And it feels like it could make a very good and entertaining blockbuster Hollywood film. But in the end, it doesn't appear to fulfill the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction's explicit brief, whatever that is. Before the committee selected it, the New York Times was very impressed with its emotional impact and war commentary. So I assume this falls into the reasoning for its win. On this basis, though, We've seen other texts that have innovated these themes, whereas Angel Down replicates them for worthy entertainment value, but not for anything that feels actually innovative. The committee had lots of other outstanding choices from the last year, including from the horror genre, I'd say. So this selection is perplexing. My final assessment is simply this: Angel Down is very entertaining and creative, but it doesn't fit the Pulitzer's history of choosing innovative fiction. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video. This has been Tilting at Tomes. I'm Ben.